I turned the corner and nearly dropped my wrench. There, bent awkwardly over the marble railing of the balcony, was Alindra, the Empress herself. Her skin shimmered in the late afternoon sunlight, a soft lavender pink that seemed to glow against the golden trim of her robes. Her long white hair spilled forward in a silken curtain, half hiding her face but not the unmistakable crown sitting slightly askew atop her head. For a heartbeat, I thought I had wandered into some dream, or maybe a trap. Because what mechanic in his right mind expects to find his Empress stuck halfway through a palace balcony? Her eyes snapped toward me, sharp and silver like polished blades. "You," she commanded, voice trembling with more embarrassment than authority. "You saw nothing." Every palace guard in sight suddenly became the world's best statue. Their helmets dipped toward the floor, their posture frozen, not one daring to acknowledge what was happening. I rubbed the back of my neck, toolbox rattling at my side. "Right. Of course. Nothing at all," I muttered. Just her radiance, appreciating the view. Her lips pressed into a thin, dangerous line. "Mechanic. Remove me from this predicament." I crouched down beside her, doing my best not to laugh as I examined the problem. The balcony rails were carved inward in ornate loops, the sort of design nobles like to brag about. Alindra's flowing golden robes had twisted into those curves, pulling her hips tight between the rails. Regal, imposing, untouchable, except not today. Today she was stuck like a kid squeezing too far through a fence. I cleared my throat. "Well, I can see the issue." Her silver eyes narrowed. "Do not narrate my humiliation. Fix it." I tugged carefully at the hem of her robe. No luck. The fabric was caught as firmly as a jammed gear. I braced against the railing and gave her a careful push at the waist. "Gentler," she hissed, knuckles widening against the stone balustrade. Sorry, I muttered. I usually deal with pipes and valves, not royal upholstery." She turned her head just enough to glare at me. I couldn't resist. "Hell of a view though, Your Majesty." Her cheeks deepened to a warmer shade of violet pink, eyes widening in shock. "You dare," she began, then stumbled over her own words, clearly too mortified to finish the threat. I lifted my hands innocently. "Just talking about the rail spacing. Fine craftsmanship. Very symmetrical." Behind us, one of the guards coughed into his fist, shoulders shaking. "Not a word," Alindra barked, her voice slicing the air like a drawn blade. The guard stiffened instantly. I tried again, circling behind her and crouching lower. "Okay, here's the thing. You're stuck because the robe twisted around the curve. I'll need to lift the fabric, free it from the stone, and then you push while I pull. Or, the other way around." "Unacceptable," she snapped. "Your Majesty," I said carefully, "the other option is calling in a stonemason to chisel you free. Pretty sure the nobles would love to gossip about that." Her silence was sharp enough to cut. Finally, she muttered, "Proceed." "Carefully." So I did. My fingers worked through embroidery worth more than my entire year's pay, tugging gently to loosen the stubborn folds. Each time I pulled, she stiffened, then tried to shift her hips in the opposite direction. The result was the most undignified shuffle in palace history. "Almost got it," I grunted. "You said that 3 times already." "Well, it's stubborn," I said, like its owner. Her head jerked around, eyes flashing. "You will pay for that insolence." "Gladly, if it gets you free faster." With a final tug, the robe came loose just as she shoved backward. The momentum knocked me flat on my back, toolbox clattering, and she tumbled right on top of me. For half a heartbeat, the world stopped. The Empress of the realm sprawled across a lowly mechanic, her crown tilted dangerously, her hair curtaining both of us. I could feel every pair of eyes in the courtyard burning into us. "Well, Your Majesty," I wheezed from beneath her, happy to be of service. Her cheeks darkened, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of amusement. She rose quickly, straightening her robes with regal grace. "You will report to my chambers this evening," she declared loud enough for every guard to hear. I scrambled upright, heart hammering. "Wait, am I in trouble, or?" Her smile was small but wicked. "You will find out." And with that, she swept away, leaving me staring after her like a fool with grease still on my hands. By the time I limped back to my workshop, the gossip had already spread. Servants whispered behind curtains, guards smirked from behind helms. I was doomed. That evening, a stiff-backed attendant appeared at my door. "The Empress requests your immediate presence." His tone suggested he'd rather announce an execution. I followed through corridors of gleaming marble, my boots squeaking against floors polished brighter than mirrors. When the attendant knocked once and withdrew, I stepped inside Alindra's private chambers. They weren't what I expected. Less golden thrones, more sunlight and warmth. Bookshelves, a writing desk, tall windows casting lavender glow across the room. And there she was, not perched on her throne, but lounging in an armchair, one leg crossed casually over the other, eyes sharp as ever. "Mechanic," she said smoothly. I bowed awkwardly. Chiron Dusk, Your Majesty." Her lips curved faintly. Chiron Dusk. "Do you know what happens to men who witness their Empress in compromising situations?" I swallowed. "Executed? Banished? Maybe assigned to polish marble floors until they collapse." "All three are traditional," she mused. I shifted uneasily. "For the record, I plan to take the memory of that balcony straight to the grave." "You will," she said. "But not because I order it, because you swear it." My brows shot up. "You want me to swear an oath?" She gestured lazily to the chair across from her. "Sit. Before your knees give way." I sat stiffly, feeling like a schoolboy hauled before his tutor. She studied me for a long, unnerving moment, white hair spilling like a curtain of light. "I could buy your silence," she said finally. "Gold. Jewels. Land." I snorted before I could stop myself. And here I thought silence was free. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity, as though no one had ever dared answer her like that. "I'm not most men," I added, "and gold doesn't fix crooked pipes." That earned the faintest twitch at the corner of her lips. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Tell me, Chiron. Has anyone ever spoken to me the way you do?" "I'd imagine not," I said carefully. "Most people don't meet their ruler while she's stuck in a balcony rail." For a heartbeat, silence stretched, and then she laughed. Not the polite laugh of a queen humoring her courtiers, but a real laugh, sharp and alive, echoing through the room like it hadn't been used in years. The sound startled me almost as much as the balcony had. When she finally composed herself, she poured 2 cups of tea and slid one across to me. "Consider this your upgrade from tin mugs." I blinked at the delicate porcelain, then at her, then lifted it. Cheers." She downed hers in one gulp, slamming the cup down with surprising force. "Delightful. Pour me another." And that's how it began, the strangest evening of my life. A mechanic and an empress, sharing tea and laughter in chambers where silence used to reign. The next morning, I told myself it had all been a fever dream. Surely the Empress hadn't laughed at my jokes. Surely she hadn't made me pour her tea like some tavern companion. And surely, absolutely surely, she wouldn't summon me again. Except she did. I was halfway through repairing a cracked irrigation pipe when a messenger in immaculate robes blocked my path. "Her Majesty requests you in the western wing," he intoned. "A chandelier chain has developed tension." I frowned. Chains don't just develop tension. They hold it. "Her Majesty requests you," he repeated, tone flat enough to hammer nails. So I grabbed my rattling toolbox and trudged across the palace, muttering about nobles who thought gravity could be repaired. The chandelier in question hung perfectly fine, glittering over a quiet chamber. Beneath it sat Alindra herself, scrolls spread across a desk, pretending she hadn't just dragged me across half the palace. I craned my neck. "Chain looks sturdy to me, Your Majesty." "Then ensure it remains so," she said smoothly, not even glancing up. I climbed the ladder, polished a link that gleamed already, then climbed back down. "Solid as fortress gates. Won't budge for another 50 years. At last, her silver eyes flicked toward me, glimmering faintly. "Then we are fortunate you confirmed it." I stifled a grin. "Right. Fortunate indeed." And just like that, the summons became routine. One day it was a leaky pipe in the north corridor, miraculously dry by the time I arrived. Another day a squeaky hinge that sang perfectly silent. A wardrobe door that supposedly jammed but swung open with a gentle nudge. Every time, Alindra sat nearby, pretending to be occupied while sneaking glances my way, her lips twitching like she dared me to point out the obvious. And every time, I played along. "Fixed," I'd say, dusting my hands like a hero. "Excellent," she'd reply, eyes sparkling. One afternoon she even joined me, leaning against a stair rail as I pretended to tighten bolts. "You look so certain in your work," she mused, standing close enough that her perfume, something like warm spice and night-blooming flowers, curled around me. "That's because I know when I'm fixing things," I said, smirking up at her, "and when I'm just here on other assignments." Her laugh rang out, bright and sharp, echoing down the hall. A pair of passing servants froze mid-step, their eyes wide like they'd stumbled across a miracle. By the time word spread through the palace, the gossip hit like wildfire. The marble Empress had laughed. And worse, she laughed with a mechanic. Jareth, my oldest friend, cornered me in our cramped quarters one evening, his grin wider than a canyon. He jabbed a finger at me. "You're the one. The whole palace is talking. Our Empress, the untouchable Alindra, smiling because of you." I shrugged, tossing my boots aside. "Fixed a railing. That's all. Fixed a railing, my boots. You charmed her. Tell me you didn't charm her." I leaned back on my cot, trying not to grin. "Honestly, I don't think she gets many chances to just talk to anyone who isn't terrified of saying the wrong word." Jareth groaned, dragging both hands down his face. "Chiron, do you realize what this means? If the nobles catch wind of this, they'll either crown you or kill you." "Hopefully neither," I muttered. "I'm fond of staying alive and uncrowned." But he was right about one thing: the palace walls had ears sharper than razors. Weeks blurred together. I was summoned nearly every other day. Sometimes Alindra asked me what I thought of the banners in the courtyard. Other times, she asked what bread I preferred with stew. And then there were the harder questions. "What do the people truly think of me?" she asked one evening, her gaze steady. "Do they see me as distant? Cold?" I hesitated, but lying felt pointless. "Some do. They admire you, but from a distance. Like a statue. Beautiful, yes, but untouchable." She didn't flinch, though I saw the tension in her jaw. "And you?" "I think statues are boring," I said with a crooked grin. "You're better when you laugh." Her eyes softened just enough for me to notice. The more we spoke, the less she seemed like an empress carved of crystal and more like a woman carrying the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders. A woman who sometimes needed someone to make a fool of himself just to break the silence. It couldn't last forever. One evening, as we walked out of her chambers, a cluster of ministers bowed deeply. Their eyes lingered on me, not with respect, but calculation. "Your Majesty," one of them purred, "it warms our hearts to see you in such good spirits of late. We wonder what has brought about this pleasant change." Elindra's smile was polite, unreadable. The empire thrives when all its parts are maintained. The minister's gaze flicked pointedly to the toolbox in my hand. His smile tightened. Indeed. I left that corridor with a chill down my spine. The palace was noticing, and not everyone was amused. That night Jareth paced our quarters like a trapped animal. I told you this was dangerous. The nobles are talking. They don't like surprises, especially ones involving commoners and crowns. Relax, I said, though the knot in my chest betrayed me. It's just repairs. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew the truth. Whatever this was between me and Elindra, it wasn't about repairs anymore. The palace had become a chessboard. And every whispered laugh, every smile she gave me, moved the pieces closer to checkmate. When council day arrived, I usually hid in the workshop. Endless speeches, pompous nobles, politics dressed as theater, it wasn't a place for grease-stained mechanics. But that morning a messenger appeared at my door. Her Majesty requests your presence in council, he said. I nearly dropped my spanner. Council? Surely you mean the gardener. Or the blacksmith. Or anyone not me. The Empress was specific. And so I found myself trailing into the grand chamber, heart thundering. Stained glass spilled light over rows of nobles, their embroidered silks rustling like restless birds. At the center sat Elindra, regal as ever, her gaze flicking toward me with the faintest curve of her lips. I tried to vanish against a pillar. But then Lord Vaynar rose, broad and gray-haired, his sneer sharp enough to cut stone. Your Majesty, he said, bowing mockingly. Word has reached the council of certain events in the western wing. A balcony, I believe. The chamber hushed. My throat closed up. Elindra's expression remained serene, though a faint blush tinted her lavender cheeks. Rumors, she said smoothly, are not the business of this council. Perhaps not, Vaynar countered, his voice carrying. But perception is. When whispers spread that our Empress struggles against her own palace stonework, one wonders if she is not overmatched in other matters as well. Murmurs rippled. Nobles leaned together like vultures. Something in my chest snapped before I thought better of it. You dare question the Empress? I barked, stepping forward. Heads turned. Gasps followed. Vaynar's sneer deepened. And who speaks? A servant? A mechanic? Yes, I shot back. A mechanic who was there. Who saw her leaning too far because she was watching your troops, making sure they drilled properly, because you, Lord Vaynar, certainly weren't. The chamber erupted in whispers and a few muffled chuckles. Vaynar's face darkened like a storm. Insufferable, he began. But Elindra raised a hand. The room fell silent. Her eyes lingered on me, not with fury, but with warmth. Enough. Lord Vaynar, perhaps you would do better to ensure your battalion's competence before casting stones. And as for my mechanic, her lips quirked just faintly, he speaks out of turn, but not without cause. Laughter rippled through the chamber, real and sharp. Vaynar sank back into his seat, his glare smoldering. And Elindra, tall and radiant, steered the council back to matters of borders and harvests as though nothing had happened. But I knew something had shifted. The chamber had seen me speak for her. And she had let me. That night, I barely slept. The echoes of her laughter in council followed me, sweet and dangerous all at once. I told myself to keep my head down after that council disaster. Fix a pipe, patch a valve, polish a hinge, anything but draw more eyes. But the palace had other plans. Whispers chased me through corridors like smoke, curling from every corner. Servants smirked, guards muttered, nobles stared too long. By midnight, sleep was impossible. I lay in my cot staring at the ceiling, every nerve still buzzing with the memory of Lord Vaynar's scowl. That's when I heard it, metal scraping, deliberate, too careful to be the wind. I rolled out of bed, wrench already in my hand. A second scrape. A whisper of movement. Shadows glided down the corridor outside, cloaked figures moving silent as smoke. Their blades caught slivers of moonlight. My blood went cold. They weren't after the kitchens. They weren't after the treasury. Their path was straight toward Elindra's chambers. I should have shouted. I should have banged pots, raised alarms, anything. But instead, my legs carried me forward, heart hammering like a drum. 3 of them, I counted, assassins, the kind who kill quick and vanish quicker. One was already kneeling at her door with tools in hand. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. They slipped inside. I didn't think. I charged. The first assassin spun just as I crashed into him, swinging my wrench wild. The blow cracked against his mask, sending him sprawling. Steel hissed free behind me. Empress! I bellowed. The chamber erupted. Curtains ripped back, candles flared, and Elindra rose, not in golden robes, but a simple nightdress. Still regal, still towering, but armed. From beneath her desk, she drew a blade longer than my arm, its silver edge gleaming in the moonlight. Her eyes, normally calm pools of silver, blazed like stormlight. Assassins, she hissed. The other 2 lunged. One at her. One at me. I ducked, wrench meeting steel in a clash that rattled my bones. Sparks burst in the candlelight. My arms shook, but I pressed forward, teeth bared. Elindra moved like fire turned flesh. Her blade cut arcs of silver, graceful and furious. The first assassin stumbled back under her strikes, his guard breaking. But me? I was losing ground. Each blow hammered my wrench down, driving me step by step toward the balcony rail. My boots skidded against polished marble. Cold stone slammed my shoulder. I was trapped. The assassin grinned beneath his mask, blade raised. Desperate, I dropped low and swung wide. My wrench smashed his knee with a sick crack. He howled, collapsing sideways into the railing. Marble chipped, cracked spiderwebbing across the carved stone. And suddenly I was half hanging through the bars, arms flailing. The irony hit me like a punch, I was stuck in the balcony rail. Not like this, I groaned, thrashing. Your Majesty, pull. Elindra whirled, cutting her foe down in a single, savage strike. Her sword dripped as she lunged across the room. She dropped the blade, seized my arm, and yanked with the strength of a giant. I popped free just as the assassin lunged again. Elindra reclaimed her sword mid-spin and met him head-on. Her blade drove clean through his chest. Silence fell. 3 bodies lay sprawled across the marble, blood seeping dark into polished stone. My chest heaved as though I'd run miles. Elindra stood above them, breath steady, blade gleaming crimson. Then her gaze shifted to me. For a heartbeat her expression trembled between fury and laughter. Through the balcony, she muttered, voice low. Again. I wheezed out a laugh despite myself. At least this time, it wasn't your robe. Her lips parted, and to my shock, she laughed. A sharp, sudden burst of sound that rang against the midnight walls like a bell. The guards stormed in moments later, late and blustering. They froze at the sight, 3 dead assassins, their Empress and a grease-stained mechanic spattered in blood, laughing like lunatics. By dawn, the palace was a hornet's nest. Word spread like fire. Assassins in the Empress's chambers, 3 corpses cooling on marble, a mechanic swinging a wrench beside her like a soldier. The guards who'd arrived late now looked at me differently. Some with respect, some with suspicion, and some with envy. Jareth found me slumped in the workshop, scrubbing blood from my wrench with trembling arms. He shut the door and hissed, "What in the 9 hells happened?" "Long night," I muttered. "Assassins?" His jaw dropped. "Assassins? And you fought them with a wrench?" "Worked better than it does on pipes," I smirked weakly. "You're insane," he groaned, pacing. "The whole palace is buzzing. Half say you're a hero, half say you're cursed. Do you realize what you've done? Saved her life, I said simply. And I'd do it again. The council convened before noon. Nobles packed the chamber, their silks rustling like hungry vultures. I had no business being there, but Alindra insisted I attend. Lord Vaynar wasted no time. He rose, cloak sweeping behind him. Your Majesty, this attempt on your life is proof of weakness. Our enemies sense cracks in your rule. And those cracks, his eyes flicked to me, are widened by the company you keep. Agreement rippled through the hall. Whispers sharp as knives filled the air. Alindra sat tall, her face unreadable, her golden robes faintly stained with blood at the hem. She let them hiss until the chamber nearly shook. Then she stood. Her white hair gleamed in shafts of light. Her lavender-pink skin glowed like a storm at dusk. Her voice cut through the hall. When assassins entered my chambers last night, it was not Lord Vaynar who stopped them. It was not this council. Not even the guards, who arrived too late. It was him. 100 eyes turned to me. My stomach dropped. Chiron Dusk, mechanic of the palace, she said, stepping forward. He stood against steel with iron. He risked his life without hesitation. And when I pulled him from the same balcony rail that once trapped me, he laughed. Gasps. Murmurs. He laughed, she continued, because he is not afraid to see me as I am. Not untouchable. Not flawless. Human. Her gaze swept the chamber like a storm. And that is why I will not hide him in shadows. From this day forward, Chiron Dusk is my chosen hand. Advisor. Protector. The one I trust when others whisper. The chamber erupted. Ministers sputtered. Soldiers pounded fists to their chests. Some nobles shouted in outrage. Lord Vaynar's face darkened, fury etched deep. I stood frozen, every eye burning holes through me. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. As Alindra strode past, she leaned close enough for only me to hear. You are reckless, she murmured. And I should have you whipped. But stars help me. I've never enjoyed counsel so much. She swept on, leaving me stunned in her wake, heart thundering, knowing I'd just been bound to her in ways I barely understood. And maybe, for the first time, I wanted it. The palace didn't quiet after that council. If anything, the air grew sharper, charged like a storm waiting to break. Nobles eyed me openly now, whispers slithering through corridors like snakes. Upstart. Commoner. Dangerous. Alindra carried on with her duties, chin high, robes sweeping in golden arcs, as though their daggers in silk didn't touch her. But I saw the tension in her shoulders when she thought no one noticed. Jareth begged me nightly. Run, Chiron. Get out before they get you in some back hallway. You don't belong here. Maybe he was right. But leaving her felt impossible now. The breaking point came 3 nights later. A guard I didn't recognize appeared at my door. The Empress requires you, he said flatly. Something in his eyes made my stomach turn. Still, I followed, toolbox in hand. He led me through unfamiliar corridors, deeper into the palace's underbelly, where walls sweated with age. When the ambush came, I was ready. Figures stepped from the shadows, blades gleaming. At their head stood Lord Vaynar. I tightened my grip on the wrench. Figures you wouldn't have the spine to face her in daylight. His sneer cut the dark. Daylight is for politics. Night is for corrections. The Empress is blind, infatuated with her pet mechanic. But the Empire cannot afford weakness. You will disappear quietly. She will grieve. She will endure. You don't know her at all, I said. He raised a hand. Assassins advanced. And then the corridor blazed with light. Alindra herself stepped forward, sword drawn, flanked by loyal guards. Her voice thundered. You dare strike at me through shadows? Against the one I named my hand? Vaynar sneered. You shame the crown. Already the people laugh. Already they whisper. You lower yourself. Her blade slammed into stone with a crack that echoed down the hall. Laughter is no weakness. Trust cannot be bought with coin. And loyalty, her eyes flicked to me, loyalty I know when I see it. The fight erupted. Steel rang. Boots thundered. I ducked a strike, swung my wrench like a hammer. It cracked across an assassin's wrist, sending his blade clattering. Another lunged, but Alindra was faster. Her sword flashed, cutting him down before he touched me. Through the chaos, Vaynar tried to flee. I barreled into him, knocking us both sprawling. His dagger nicked my arm, burning hot, but I brought the wrench down across his jaw. He crumpled with a strangled groan. When the dust settled, bodies littered the corridor. Alindra stood tall, breathing hard but unbowed, her sword dripping crimson. She looked at me, not as ruler to subject, but as woman to man, fierce and unguarded. You fight like a madman, she said softly. I grinned through the sting in my arm. I fight like someone who doesn't want to see you stuck in another rail without me there. Her laugh rang out, defiant and free, echoing off the stone. Guards dragged Vaynar away, bound and cursing. Alindra slid her blade home, turned to me with a dangerous, radiant smile. You realize, she murmured, you've made more enemies tonight than you can count. I shrugged. As long as you count me as a friend, I'll call it even. Her hand brushed mine, brief, but enough to send my heart stuttering. Friend, she repeated, testing the word like it was precious. Then, more firmly, chosen hand. The palace never truly slept. But after Vaynar's fall, it felt different. Ministers walked softer. Servants bowed deeper. Guards saluted me now, as though I wore a uniform. It was unnerving. Jareth found me in the workshop, staring at my wrench like it held answers. They're calling you the Iron Hand, he said quietly. Stories already spreading. You stood toe-to-toe with assassins. Laid out Vaynar with one blow. 3 blows, I muttered. Legends don't care about details. He smirked, then sobered. Be careful, Charon. Legends burn bright and fast. He wasn't wrong. But I couldn't walk away now. 2 nights later, Alindra sent for me again. This time, no guards, no pretense. Just a folded note slipped under my door, meet me. Balcony. I found her where the parchment promised, standing tall in fading twilight. The city stretched wide below, torches flickering to life, the hum of voices rising with the night air. Her hair shimmered silver white in the last rays of sun, her skin glowing lavender pink against the darkening sky. She didn't turn when I approached. Do you know what they'll say tomorrow? Probably that you've gone mad, keeping a mechanic at your side, I said. They already say that, she murmured, a faint smile tugging her lips. Then tomorrow's scandal is what? That you're smiling too much? Laughing too easily? Perhaps they are right, she admitted. Her eyes caught mine, luminous. I shrugged. Softer doesn't mean weaker. It means alive. She tested the word. Alive. For a moment, silence wrapped us warm and fragile. Then she deliberately leaned against the railing. I stiffened. Careful. Her smirk widened. Relax, Charon. I only get stuck when you're around. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. She chuckled, bells on the breeze. Perhaps. Perhaps not. If you do that again, I groaned, dragging a hand down my face, I'm rebuilding every railing in this palace twice as wide. Her laugh deepened, shoulders shaking, silver hair swaying. The marble Empress, no, not marble anymore, laughed freely on her own balcony. I couldn't help it. I laughed too. Below, the city carried on, oblivious to its ruler, doubled over in laughter with a grease-stained mechanic at her side. When the sound faded, she sighed, eyes shining. Do you regret it, Chiron? All of this? Not a chance, I said. Her hand brushed mine on the railing, subtle, fleeting, but enough to make my chest ache. Good, she whispered. Because I suspect this is only the beginning. We stood there as night claimed the sky, laughter lingering, city lights flickering alive. And for the first time, I believed her. This was only the beginning. And that, my friends, is the unlikely tale of Chiron Dusk, the mechanic who laughed in the face of council, fought assassins with a wrench, and somehow ended up the chosen hand of Empress Elindra, the ruler once called Marble, but who discovered she could laugh after all. What started as a balcony mishap grew into something bigger, two people from different worlds daring to see each other as human, even when politics, whispers, and blades tried to keep them apart. It wasn't just about pipes, gears, or broken railings, it was about trust, laughter, and the strange ways fate throws us together. Maybe that's the heart of the story. Sometimes, strength isn't in silence or perfection. Sometimes it's in laughing at the worst moments, standing up when everyone expects you to kneel, or reaching out a hand when the whole world thinks you shouldn't. And if you enjoyed this ride through palace halls and midnight battles, here's my ask: hit that subscribe button. Not only does it help this channel grow, but it makes sure you'll never miss the next strange, funny, or thrilling adventure we tell together. Go ahead, click subscribe, drop a like, share this story with someone who could use a laugh. Because laughter is no weakness. It's what keeps us alive. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and remember, watch out for balcony rails.